Hey guys, Adelia here. If you don't know much about school choice, and more specifically, you have no idea why homeschoolers would not want school choice, why we're against it, then this is the perfect video for you. Thank you so much for tuning in to this second part of Subtle Rampage Podcast, episode 30. In this segment of the show, Shauna and I will be kind of wrapping up our discussion on homeschooling, talking a bit about the difference between homeschool co-ops and homeschool tutorials, and how homeschool tutorials are kind of taking over the whole community, to be honest. And then towards the end of the episode, I'll get into a little bit about school choice and why exactly homeschoolers do not want it. Anyways, thank you for listening again, and I hope you enjoy. The second thing I wanted to talk about that I feel like a lot of new homeschoolers and non-homeschoolers don't really understand is the difference between co-ops and tutorials.
Yeah.
And I think even a lot of people who have been homeschooling for years don't really grasp the difference between co-ops and tutorials.
And honestly, people outside the homeschool world don't know what either of those things are.
Most definitely. When I, as a kid, I would tell people who weren't homeschoolers, like, I go to co-op every Thursday.
Yeah.
They thought farmers co-op. Like, that's their immediate
Like,
thought.
I have to still explain it to people I meet who are adults. Like, not saying, like, you don't know what a co-op is. It's just, like, I still have to keep explaining it to people what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. But for those of you who don't know, or, you know what a co-op is or whatever, and you just don't understand the difference that I'm going to be making here, a co-op, okay, is pretty much like a homeschool group that gets together once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever. They get together a certain amount of times a school year, and there are classes that kids of all ages can pretty much take. It's very family oriented. High school students, middle school students, kids, whatever. There's a nursery. Okay, and the idea is that it's a community effort. It's a cooperative. Okay, all of the moms have some sort of responsibility. Some of the moms are more interested in science, and that's their expertise, and that's what they teach. They, if they're better with younger kids, they teach an elementary school level science, or they teach a high school science if they're really knowledgeable about it. Like, all these moms come together and they bring their different strengths in teaching together, and they teach classes for these kids that, for the most part, a lot of the moms in that group are not going to teach at home, especially when it comes to high school level stuff.
Yes.
If there's one mom who's really, math minded, okay, and there's a lot of parents who are would much rather have somebody else try to figure out algebra with their kid, then that mom is going to teach an algebra class, and the high schoolers are going to take the algebra class. And it just depends on how big the co-op is, but, usually you can get a pretty good slew of class options for every single grade level. And, a lot of the times, because, you're kind of catering to what different families need, a lot of the pregnant moms or the nursing moms or the moms with littles, they'll end up, their service hour is not necessarily teaching a course. It's more so, they're watching all the babies in the nursery, or they're, teaching a toddler play class or a Bible class or something like that with the little ones, so that they can be with their kids, instead of having to have somebody else watch them when they're still real little. So there's a lot more community effort into a co-op.
Very much community based.
Yeah. And the thing about co-ops too is that the idea is that because the moms are the ones doing the work, that the only cost really is materials for the courses, and sometimes cost of where you're holding it. But and increasingly I'm seeing a lot more churches charge homeschool groups.
Yeah, and subsequently kicking those groups out.
Yeah, kicking homeschool groups out because they decide to start charging. When really, if we're looking at it like, you're a church, you are a Christian organization, if you have space for a homeschool group to meet, especially a Christian homeschool group, why you are not using that as a way to outreach, I do not understand. Why you are charging them as if they are a private school or a public school making money off of it, I do not understand, because co-ops are the moms doing all the work, for their children. And a lot of times they're teaching values that you as a church would probably agree with. So there's absolutely no reason to be charging these co-ops anything to set up at your church. You should be encouraging it.
Yeah, and as a church, you're supposed to be reflective of that community aspect. Like you are welcoming the homeschoolers into your community. I mean, that's how I started going to this one church. Like I started going because of the co-op that was founded there.
Exactly. So it's just kind of one of those things where if you're a church and you're being a little too business minded, knock it off.
Not what church is.
Yeah. Quit being a business. Be a church. Be God's people. Okay, I'll be done. But yeah, so that's kind of like co-ops. Like I know the first co-op that my family and I ever did, I think it was like when we first started doing it, I think it was like $35 a semester per family. Because the idea was that if everybody contributes $35 a semester, that's going to cover all the, resources and stuff that we need to conduct certain classes. And sometimes if it was a high school class where you needed specific, like if it was a drawing class, okay, and you needed specific pencils and paper and whatever, sometimes that was, you just went and bought that stuff on your own. Sometimes there was an additional fee for the teacher to provide it. It just depended, but it was a very cheap option for homeschool families to come together and learn things in a different way and have a community and hang out and have social time and make friends and all of that stuff. So that's kind of the idea of a co-op. Now, when I was probably hitting middle school age is when I started hearing more and more about these tutorials. And tutorials are more like, they're more like school, honestly, if you ask me. And the way that happens is because a lot of tutorials, they're not being taught by moms.
Right.
They're being taught by tutors. So a lot of these tutors, they're either former public school teachers or they tutor for a living, or sometimes they are the homeschool moms who, got a specific degree in something and tutor it already. Like, these are people who were already getting paid for their services that the tutorial has now brought in to teach classes. And so the difference here, the biggest difference, at least in my opinion, is that it is insanely more expensive to go to a tutorial.
Very expensive.
Yes. Sometimes, depending on where you are going, you're looking at like $300 a class.
$500, like in total sometimes.
Yeah. And the thing is that what happens with tutorials is it ends up being a lot less family oriented. It ends up being a lot less community oriented, because what happens is families can't afford to take all 5 of their children to this tutorial because it's so insanely expensive. So what happens is a lot of the time it'll be like a parent that was looking for, a biology with lab course. Okay, they wanted to not do the dissecting owl pellets at home. They wanted to send their child off to someone else to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that stuff gets a little gross.
And smelly.
But, so say that's the situation, and, and they have a whole slew of kids, different age ranges, but they can only afford a certain amount, and so they send their one child to this tutorial for one course, and it ends up costing, like, anywhere from $200 to $600, $700 for the whole school year. Okay, it just depends on what the price range is, but it does get up there, especially if you have more than one kid taking more than one course. And it's honestly just ridiculous, especially at the tutorials where most of the people teaching are other homeschool moms. It's like, I get it, you should be paid for your knowledge and for your work, but in these environments, it very much gets rid of the community-based mindset. It very much gets rid of what homeschooling is all about. So yeah, there's that. And the other thing with tutorials is a lot of them are not little kid friendly.
No.
There's not a nursery, okay? There's not...
It's mainly high school level, honestly.
Mainly high school level, and some of them offer, like, middle school level stuff. And even the ones that do offer younger kid courses, they're insanely expensive younger kid courses. And they should not be that expensive at all. So that there's that. And what ends up happening with tutorials too, when you have these former public school teachers coming in to teach courses, is you get a lot more of the public school vibe.
Yeah, which is what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. So you get a lot more of the public school vibe. The most boring classes I ever took were taught by former public school teachers. I am sorry to those public school teachers, but You were not entertaining. You did not make it exciting. I'm sorry. It was just really bad, and I could tell that you came from a public school, because I was always used to being taught by moms who were trying to make it fun and make it exciting and get you to want to learn. Even the subjects I hated and the classes I hated, you could still tell that the person put effort into trying to engage the kids. And instead, what happens with, or what happened in a lot of my classes that were taught by former public school teachers, was it was exactly like public school. They were using the same type of approach. They were using the same type of curriculum. It just was not it. Sorry. Let's see. There was something else that's different. Oh, the schedule for tutorials. That's also different. A lot of tutorials now are doing, like, kind of a college model. So they'll hold classes like Tuesdays and Thursdays of each week during the school year, or Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays of each week during the school year. You also see a lot more public schoolers who start homeschooling gravitate towards tutorials because it's so similar to school.
Yeah.
And because
they can send their kids away and
not
be involved.
Yeah, and because they're paying so much money for each course, it's kind of expected that that's a good enough level course, that the grades come back.
That's something I did want to touch on. Like, price does not equal quality.
Exactly.
Like, you can still have a quality, high education with minimal resources.
Yeah. No, spending that much money is completely unnecessary until you get, like, to the point where you want to take college courses. Then it's kind of not negotiable. But
unfortunately.
But before your kids get to college age or dual credit age, okay, like, it is so not necessary to spend that much on classes, and usually it's not really worth it. You went to one homeschool co-op.
Yes.
And I went to, I went to 3 homeschool co-ops and 1 tutorial throughout my homeschool years. Just because of our different family lifestyles and how that all pans out. But, so I, like, firsthand experienced the difference between co-ops and tutorials, and she secondhand experienced it through my wonderful storytelling abilities.
Yes.
You know, and my ability to articulate language. But yeah, no, it's just entirely different, and a lot of people will call tutorials co-ops, and I see more and more the concept of a co-op being kind of muddied, by this tutorial
like, it's
model.
trying to become something it's not.
Yeah, and so a lot of people call these tutorials co-ops, and it's not. It's a tutorial. You're paying tutors an insane amount of money to educate your kids. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. It's just, don't call it a co-op, because it's not a cooperative. Sorry.
Whole point of the name co-op.
Yeah. It's supposed to be, like, working together, community effort. All of the family is going and showing up.
Every single family pitches in something.
Yeah, and it's involved. And, like, and you're understanding, hypothetically, of each family's, like, ability to commit. And, like, it's one of those things. Right? But, another question. Did you ever have a standalone tutor?
No, I never had a personal tutor for anything.
Okay. I did once, I think.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, you take the SAT and the ACT if you're trying to get into college, whatever. So I had taken the SAT a few times, and it just wasn't really going that well, because once we got to higher math, I wasn't really interested in it. I hated it, and so I never really did my math. So that was part of the problem. Like, I did, once I actually took an algebra course, like, in person, I aced it. When I did college algebra, I aced it. So it wasn't that, like, I just couldn't figure out math. It was just that I hated it, and so I wasn't really doing it to the best of my ability. And so when it came time for me to take the SATs, I was not doing as well as I could have, because I wasn't caught up to date on my math. So my mom and I did go get a math tutor to kind of catch me up to speed on what was expected of me with the SATs. Honestly, it didn't help. It really didn't. So I quit seeing the tutor, and I just went to the community college and took college algebra. And then I took the state test again, or the country test again, whatever you
Yeah.
call it. I took the SATs again, and I did way freaking better. So all it took was me just actually taking a course, and it being fresh in my memory.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's usually how it works, I think.
yeah.
Crazy.
So what conversation, to switch topics here very rather abruptly, what conversation, if any, have you heard about school choice in the homeschool community?
I've heard frustration. That's mainly it. Like, just overhearing things my mom talks about, or things you and I have discussed.
Mhm.
Like, frustration
I
is the
gotcha.
key emotion.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are confused by the fact that a lot of homeschoolers don't want school choice. I think that there's it's a big narrative in the Republican Party on the conservative side of things. Like, a lot of people who do not homeschool, who are on that side of things, they want school choice very badly.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally, don't really understand that. But those of you who have been keeping up with the podcast and have watched every single one or listened to every single one know that I do write for the Tennessee Conservative newspaper. And actually, during this legislative session, there were several bills regarding school choice that got brought up. And so I actually got assigned to write several of them. And it was pretty consistent for about 2 weeks that I was covering these specific bills. And I remember talking to Shauna about it because I was like, for some reason, I'm getting this like ick. Like, I don't want to write these articles.
Like a big ick.
Yes, a big one.
Yes.
And it wasn't bad enough to where I was like, hey, I don't want to write this, because the people I write for are great. Like, they would have been like, okay, you don't want to write it, let me find something else, we'll switch article assignments around. Like, I'm sure it would have been fine, but if I really had like some sort of problem with it. But it wasn't that bad. It was just more along the lines of like, it felt weird to talk about school choice and not give my opinion as a homeschooler and not sort of like stand up for my homeschool community.
Yeah.
Because they are objective articles, and the thing is too is like, objective in the news is like, it's not objective.
It's not objective.
I don't believe humans can be objective, to be honest, but
yeah, I agree with that. As a human, you have your own experiences in life, and that creates a bias.
Yeah, just automatically. Even if everything you're writing is not opinionated, there's still something in there. That's how you end up with like articles from the Tennessean, and I'm sure depending on the state you're in, there's plenty of newspapers like this where it is technically objective journalism. It's not an op-ed, but it's clearly left-leaning news.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it is when I write for the Tennessee Conservative. Like, it's supposed to be objective. It's not an opinion article, but the person reading it, like the audience, is conservative. So,
it's like looking at it through a conservative lens.
Yeah, so it is like reading it, you can kind of tell that a conservative is writing it. But the problem there lies in the fact that a lot of the conservative movement, like I said, is behind like they favor school choice. Like, they want school choice. So I was having kind of a hard time with all of that, and like having my name attached to something that I wasn't like clarifying my opinion on, but it's all good. And I'll get into why homeschoolers don't like school choice in a minute. But the way I see it here in Tennessee, school choice is stupid. And
yes,
that is because I don't know if other states have done it more efficiently. I don't know if there's been like success in this. I don't know how much money other states have put into this. I just know that in Tennessee, we don't have official school choice yet. Okay, we have a pilot program that's, I think, started like last year or the year before or something, maybe 2021. And it's supposed to go on for the next couple years at least. But it's a pilot program to kind of gather data and figure out if this is something that we're going to do across the whole state. And a lot of the Republican Party push, a lot of the conservative push is get it in all counties across the state. And right now, it's only in a few counties. It was only one or two, I think. I think it was 2 counties. And then during this legislative session, they expanded it to a few more counties, this pilot program. But the way it works is that students or families of students in these counties can pretty much take the amount of money that their public school is getting for that student and they can take that amount of money and they can go elsewhere with it.
Which isn't a huge amount, honestly.
No, it's not. Therein lies my point that we'll get to. But yeah, and during this pilot program, at least, it wouldn't be the case if we had official school choice across the state. But during this pilot program, if a student takes their allotment of money and goes elsewhere, the public school will still get that money. Like, it's like they're putting additional money towards these students to be able to go elsewhere, and the public school is still getting what they would get for that student. But yeah, these students can pretty much go find a different public school, find a charter school, find a private school, or homeschool using that allotment of money that the state would typically give to the public school that they attend. Now, the problem here that I see, even if I'm looking at it through a non-homeschooler lens, is what is the public school allotment per child going to cover? A student can, take that money and go to a different public school if there's a better one closer to them or close to them. A student might be able to take that to a charter school. They might be able to take that with them in homeschool. Okay. But I'm sorry, private school?
That's not possible.
It's not possible. You realize how much private school costs. And I don't know if they've done this in other states where they have the funding to actually send public school students who don't have the money to go to private school with public school money. It is not a thing here in Tennessee. I'm sorry, the amount of money that these kids are getting to go elsewhere is not enough to pay for private school.
Yeah.
And the way that I see this going on, like, down the line, if school choice is made official and is available across the state, like, right now, the pilot program is only available to lower income students. So in that case, private school is just not an option in general.
Yeah.
But if school choice just keeps getting expanded and expanded and expanded, okay, I see it as it just really ending up being a situation where students from families who can already kind of afford private school or can totally afford private school pretty much just get a discount on private school. That's where I see this going. And, I would say maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about, but honestly, I think I know about as much as our state legislature does. Because I tuned in to so many discussions about school choice, and there were so many legislators who had they really just were, they kept asking, like, I need more clarification on what this is actually going to look like, what this is actually going to do, and, like, people weren't there to explain it, and, like, it was just a mess, if you ask me. And then there were people who were like, it's clear what it does, and we don't need somebody to explain it, and, like, all this stuff. But I'm like, literally, what does it look like?
Yeah.
In the span of a decade, 2 decades, like, what does it look like? Is it going to be expanded to people who don't need that money? And, like, and then if it's only towards low income students, like, are they actually able to go to private school? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. It's not financially possible, at least not with this pilot program, and I just don't understand it. But the reason a lot of homeschoolers are against school choice is that when you take the state money and you start putting it towards your homeschooling, okay, you're getting involved with the government again. You're allowing the government to get involved in your child's education.
And when was that a good thing?
Yes, when was that a good thing?
When did we like government? Anyone. Either party. When?
During COVID, apparently.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
They're the experts. But yeah, so the problem comes in is, like, you're kind of muddying the waters again of who is really in control of your child's education. And this is, again, one of those situations that I talk about where it's not necessarily that this one thing is going to derail the whole, like, homeschool freedom, okay? But it's little things over time, okay? Big agendas take time, okay? So you have little baby steps over time, and eventually...
It's a domino effect.
Yeah, 50 years later, what do you have? And it's kind of one of those things where, you have a lot of people who fought criticism and fought for a lot of legislation to make sure that homeschooling was legal and stayed legal, and now I think those same people feel like if we pass school choice the way that it's being presented to us with this homeschooling option, it's pretty much literally taking a step backwards when it comes to the independence and freedom of homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
Literally just take homeschool out of these bills, and the homeschool community would be fine with it.
Yeah.
Like,
that's all, like, I think that's the only thing that would resolve it, really.
I mean, there are homeschoolers that would happily take the money, but it really is, to a lot of us, it feels like very much a backdoor approach to try to get control over the homeschoolers again. When the whole point is that we do not want to be associated with the government schools. We do not want to be controlled in our curriculum choices. We do not want to be controlled in what we can and can't teach our kids. And when you start letting other entities control what your kids are being taught, what you can buy with that money, whatever it is, however that plays out over the next decades, okay?
Like, and I think that's like brings up an argument that a lot of people have against homeschooling. It's like, well, we want our child's education to be regulated. We want to make sure they are learning what they need to learn, and it's just like, you're doing that.
Learning what they need to learn according to who?
Yeah.
Just saying. Because there's a lot of things that are required learning that are part of the curriculum, that are part of the way that things are taught in public schools, that are not necessary, that are detrimental to your child's education. And there's just a lot of, it's a stupid argument. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you can teach your child. Don't let someone come up to you and say, just because you don't have a degree in education or a certification or whatever, you can still teach your child.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that homeschool moms probably deal with.
Yes.
I know there's homeschool dads too, but it's just mostly homeschool moms because how the family structure ends up a lot of the time. But homeschool dads too, okay? Homeschool parents, one of the biggest things that they probably hear throughout the span of their child's education is, are you a teacher? Are you certified in teaching? What did you go to school for? Like, and, and that's what Shauna's gotten a lot of when she says she's homeschooling her kids.
I've had several conversations and arguments, honestly, over people saying, like, I can't be a teacher to my own children because I only went to school for graphic design, which is just like, what?
You can teach your children. That's pretty much the conclusion here, is you can teach your children. And I do want to say one more thing about the school choice thing, just to put it into perspective, and then we'll wrap up. But, okay, it's kind of like the whole school choice thing for homeschooling, okay? It's kind of like the state and the government is just dangling this carrot in front of homeschool parents. They're going, hey, here's this money. It's a money carrot. Come get it. Come get it. We'll pay for all the things that you were paying for out of pocket, all the things that you were, scrounging money for. We'll cover it. And then what happens is the parents take that little money carrot, okay, and then they don't have control over their children's education. They don't have the ability to homeschool the way that you should be allowed to homeschool, 10 years down the line. And, where is the control? Where is the control? Where is the control always?
Money's at.
Where the money's at. Control, money, control. We've seen it play out in a variety of circumstances. So that is why homeschoolers have a problem with school choice. That is why we do not want school choice. Take homeschoolers out of the bill. Problem solved. There you go. Now, if you enjoyed this special blue-haired conservatives episode of Subtle Rampage Podcast and you want to see more of me and my beautiful co-host, okay, make sure that you follow the podcast, because guess what? You want to guess?
What?
Oh, we have more content coming soon.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
The two of us. Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool. I can't wait.
Okay, and you want to know what that content is about? Well, our next episode is specifically about higher education. What that was like for both of us, going from homeschool to college setting. A lot of people have questions about that. Stupid questions, but questions.
Very stupid. But...
But yeah, so we're going to talk about what it was like to go to college as homeschoolers. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that happened on college campuses and in that arena during COVID. All of that wonderful stuff. And we're just going to talk about what it's like to be a conservative on a college campus in general. But that's about it. We'll see you next week. Bye.